What is up, YouTube? I'm Devon DaVinci, leader of the Renaissance crew, and you're watching DaVinci Reacts. Today I got another video from another YouTuber that's prominent for educating the YouTube masses. This is TierZoo. TierZoo does a bunch of great videos. They're sponsored by CuriosityStream. I have not checked out CuriosityStream yet, but it's full of documentaries. I love documentaries, so I will be checking them out in the future. And depending on how much it costs, I might go ahead and sign up. And I will use the TierZoo promo if I happen to do that. I encourage you guys to do the same. Before you watch this video, just know there is a link for the original video in the description box down below. If you have not seen it yet, go and watch it on the original video first before you watch this reaction. That way, not only will you be able to, anticipate what I'm going to be watching next, and you can be like, oh, he's going to love this part or something like that. But also at the same time, you give TierZoo a view, and it allows them to continue to make the content that we all enjoy. Or if you just want somebody else to do a reaction to the video without me pausing or talking over it, that's the original video you would show them. Anyway, let's go ahead and check this out and see what it has to offer. This is the dinosaur tier list. I love dinosaurs. If you guys haven't seen my Battle of Battle of Big Rock, the Jurassic World short, at this point you probably missed it because it was taken down. I will have it up again, but I have to blur it and probably make it a DaVinci watch video. But I love dinosaurs. I've been a fan of them as long as I can remember. I used to hang them up on my wall before I got into the Black history, black prominent historical figures, and used to hang them on my wall. Before that, it was dinosaurs: Archaeopteryx, Stegosaurus, Deinonychus, Tyrannosaurus, Ankylosaurus. All of them I was a huge fan of. Even though I used to pronounce some of them wrong, I still knew what the dinosaur was, damn it. Anyway, let's go check this out.
The dinosaur clips in this video are from documentaries you can find on CuriosityStream. More on them at the end of the video.
Ba-ding. This video might get taken down, so if there's some parts that are like chopped out or blurred, that's the reason. Jurassic longhorn beetle. Place bait. It doesn't look like a raptor, but it looks like... It looks like that dinosaur from the Jurassic period. What was it? Coelophysis or something. I forgot his name. It's something like that. But y'all know what I'm talking about. The first, apex predator as far as dinosaurs. It looks kind of like that. But then again, it has the big eyes. So it could be a Troodon, maybe? It has the real big eyes. And it set bait, so that means it's smart. I'm guessing it's probably a Troodon. Or a Coelophysis.
Dinosaurs were some of the most powerful builds to ever be introduced to the game. While other factions like the Mammal Guild and Arthropod Guild have come up with some pretty impressive ones, on land, nothing has yet topped the sheer power of the Reptile Guild's greatest achievements. Even though their massive size is perhaps their most notable trait, there was also a ton of variety in the abilities and combat strategies that these builds employed. And so today I think it's finally time to release my dinosaur tier list.
I want to know who made these pixel arts, and I want to know whether or not they're going to develop a game at some point. This is like it would make an amazing 16-bit game.
Obviously there's a ton of dinosaur builds, so there's no way I can cover all of them, but I definitely will try to hit the important ones. It's worth noting that the reign of the dinosaur faction lasted more than twice as long as the reign of the mammal faction that supplanted them. And so during this huge stretch of time, dinosaur maids basically tried out every conceivable strategy, and that's why there are so many builds to talk about. But as always, we'll start from the bottom of the tier list and move up from there. At the bottom we've got Dryosaurus and Camptosaurus, two very similar herbivore builds with an interesting stat spread.
If you play the owl, you'll know why they're on
for
the
their
bottom
immense
tier.
Strength, but neither of these builds boast any sort of offensive capabilities. Instead, they have a modest but below average defensive spread, decent mobility, and above average intelligence for a dinosaur. These builds took advantage of how powerful the other herbivore builds were by sticking by the bulkier ones and relying on them to defend the herd. They also took advantage of the fact that they were faster than other herbivores, even though their mobility was lower than most predator builds. Their higher intelligence granted them more advanced perception, letting them function as the herd lookouts. But nonetheless, these builds were helpless on their own, and were easy targets for predator mains if they were ever caught undefended.
Yeah, Allosaurus used to like
their
hammer
lack of self-sufficiency puts them in F tier, in my opinion.
Their prey because their
I
jaw
think they
strength
realized
wasn't
this,
that strong.
because later on, this faction started speccing into either extra armor on their heads or spikes on their thumbs, giving them much better options for dealing with aggressive players. In D tier, we've got two carnivore builds, the first being Coelophysis.
There we go,
Coelophysis was one of the first dinosaur builds that the devs introduced.
So I was
like
correct
all
in
the
the
early
name.
dinosaurs, it really was nowhere near the power level of the ones that would be added to the game later in the Jurassic and Cretaceous expansions. The only reason it became such a popular and dominant build was because it starved and dehydrated more slowly than its non-dinosaur rivals. And this isn't to say that it didn't struggle to succeed too. It absolutely did, and often had to resort to team killing.
I'm pausing that. That's a great image to pause on while I talk about this. Usually when it comes to evolution and like just animals in general being able to adapt, the ones that tend to carry over are the ones that tend to do the best when resources are very low. So even if you're the apex predator and you're dominating the period that you live in, or the meta, as TierZoo would say, if you can't manage during the hard times, like when there's no food around, no water, or anything like that, if you can't manage during that time, you're going to die out. That's the reason why most dinosaurs died out, because they were so big, they have to eat so much food a day, and if there's not enough food, you're just going to die out. So the ones that tend to survive are the ones that like can scavenge and not survive, or can survive off of like very small means.
Just to get by.
Betrayal.
It sort of dominated the early dino meta by default,
it was a cannibal.
So I'm not going to rate it any higher than D tier. Also in D tier, we have Spinosaurus. Spinosaurus is...
Oh, I can hear the Jurassic Park 3 fans screeching and reeing. I hear 1,000 rees as their ego and pride are slowly faded into nothingness. Yeah, anybody that knows about actual dinosaurs and don't just follow their dinosaur knowledge from Jurassic Park movies will know Spinosaurus was not that good of a predator. It didn't have strong bite force. It was very big, considering the prey that it fed on, which were just fish. So it was constantly in swamps eating and trying to maintain itself. Even though it was longer than any other dinosaur, it was still a very small dinosaur. So like imagine Tommy Hearns fighting against Mike Tyson. If like T-Rex was the analogy in this example, T-Rex would be Mike Tyson, Spinosaurus would be Tommy Hearns. Even though he's taller and longer than him, his mass is nowhere close to the other, I was about to say the other dinosaur, Mike Tyson. So, like, it would be a quick fight.
A unique build that spec'd heavily into fishing abilities and aquatic adaptations, including the rare ability of electroreception, which helped it catch fish players even when they were in stealth mode. This is great for that specific application, but Spinosaurus mains weren't actually fully aquatic. They couldn't breathe underwater and still had to spend plenty of their gameplay dealing with the challenges of being a terrestrial build. And unfortunately, their stats and abilities leave a lot to be desired in terms of contending
people think
with
longer
the terrestrial
means
meta
better
at that
or
time.
stronger or something.
Because they'd spent so many evolution points adapting their build to be able to fish, they'd secured themselves a unique niche at the cost of being able to hold their own in general combat. They'd get bodied by most other carnivore mains and outsped by most herbivore mains, leaving them in an awkward position. If they'd had more time, they might have been able to gain enough experience to spec into a fully aquatic build. But unfortunately, the devs decided to up the overworld temperature.
Yeah, they should have just went straight into the water,
but drying up the rivers, leaving the Spinosaurus player base without a niche. The lesson here is that if you ever find yourself speccing into the playstyle of an amphibian, you may want to reconsider how you're spending your evolution points. Last in D tier, we have the Hadrosaurs. Now, I don't have a ton to say about these builds. Generally, their main game plan is pretty simple.
I'm gonna go back and let them talk again, but because it's dinosaurs, I have a lot to say, so I'll probably end up pausing quite a bit during this video. Hadrosaurs, for the most part, they were pretty weak, I guess. Like if you're looking at like Edmontosaurus and Parasaurolophus and things like that, they pretty much get bodied by a lot of dinosaurs. But there are some that are so big that they might be able to hold their own, like Shantungosaurus. it can, because it's like twice the size of a T-Rex, as far as like mass, it might be able to defend itself pretty well against most predators. So I'm wondering if like he makes a note to identify the smaller Hadrosaurs to the bigger ones.
Now, I don't have a ton to say about these builds. Generally, their main game plan is pretty simple. See a predator coming and run away. This is pretty similar to the Dryosaurus and Camptosaurus playstyle I mentioned in F tier, but instead of relying on the more powerful herbivores to defend them, they had the HP required to shrug off a hit or two, and actually had the mobility required to escape, assuming they saw the attack coming. Overall, this build was pretty easy to play, and had a low skill ceiling as well, since they had no actual combat abilities. All in all, there's a reason players consider Hadrosaurs more forgettable.
Hadrosaurs would just like stomp things.
In C tier, we've got two of the most famous.
That's why I said the bigger ones. That's why I said the bigger ones would be like. I don't think they should be D tier, because all Hadrosaurs pretty much just like hit and like stomp stuff, like just brute force and blunt force trauma. So, like I said, if you have like 15 tons behind that stomp, you can do some damage to a 8-9 ton T-Rex, or even smaller dinosaurs, which were lighter than that. So
is more forgettable among dinosaur builds. In C tier, we've got two of the most famous Jurassic builds. The first is Stegosaurus. Taking a quick look at the Stegosaurus' stats, it's clear that this build was extreme on many fronts.
They were just stupid.
It had one of the lowest intelligence levels of any dinosaur, and also didn't exactly have much in terms of mobility either. However, it had pretty incredible combat stats and powerful abilities to back it up. Most notably, its backplates and Thagomizer. Their backplates significantly reduce the chance of an attacker scoring a critical hit against them, since it's much harder to bite down on a Stegosaurus' weak point when there are plates in the way. Their backplates can also be flushed with blood to grant a large intimidation buff, which works great against predator and herbivore mains alike. The Thagomizer is one of the most unique weapons of any dinosaur build. The Thagomizer has one of the highest critical hit chances of any weapon in the game, often dealing enough damage to one-shot most players.
I wonder why.
Because it's a tail spike, this attack has a lot of reach, making approaching a defending Stegosaurus player extremely difficult. However, the strategy was by no means perfect. Their low mobility made fleeing from battle impossible, so if an enemy did know how to subvert its defenses, Stegosaurus mains would be out of options, and since their tails weren't long enough to cover an attack from the front, that was often their downfall.
I wonder why the Thagomizers weren't like carried on, like as far as like evolution. Like you don't really see any animals with Thagomizers anymore, or I guess like in a way clubtails in general. Like it seems weird that like they just like disappeared. I don't know. Maybe there are animals out there that have them. I just don't know it, but I can't think of any off the top of my head.
And since their tails weren't long enough to cover an attack from the front, that was often their downfall. Thankfully, their base game plan was relatively simple, so their low intelligence didn't hinder them too much. Also in C tier, we have every Stegosaurus main's arch-enemy, Allosaurus. The Allosaurus build was unique in that it actually invested very little into the bite attack, only having the bite strength of a lion.
With its jaw.
Instead, Allosaurus dealt damage by using its head like a battle axe, swinging its open jaw down onto an enemy player. This dealt heavy damage, but was nowhere near the devastating power of some of the top tier dinosaur combat moves. It had the highest top speed of any build during its time, but had relatively low stamina, meaning it could only sprint for a short time, also similar to lions today. While one-on-one, Allosaurus tended to get bodied by the stronger herbivore players of its time. In packs, they could take down just about anything. Overall, a solid mid-tier, whose strategies got expanded upon and refined by the later dinosaur builds. In B tier, we have a few builds which did the exact opposite of what Allosaurus did, in that they put a ton of evolution points into a single combat tactic. First, the build which spec'd into the claw skill tree, granting
Therizinosaurus. Very long claws. I believe that for a long time they were thought to be carnivores, but relatively recent evidence has shown that they were actually herbivores. So it's like you have these herbivores with these giant Edward Scissorhands, Freddy Krueger claws, and it's like, what the hell was trying to go up against that?
To a single combat tactic. First, the build which spec'd into the claw skill tree,
murder
granting
turkeys.
it the longest claws to ever exist in the game, Therizinosaurs. Therizinosaurs were excellent in 1v1 combat because their claws gave them incredible reach and damage, perfect for slicing at the heads of carnivore mains that were trying to bite them. Their slash attack was the strongest the game had ever seen. In fact, they put so many points into the claw skill tree that they had none left over for teeth or mobility, and were actually forced to change teams from the carnivore side to the herbivore side, making them the only build from the theropod faction to opt not to be a predator. This actually worked out really well for them, because they no longer had to compete with the other predator mains for XP, and were also taller than most herbivore players typically seen in the forest biomes. Sure, they were lacking in intelligence and mobility, and also couldn't actually gain any experience from the enemies that they defeated with their claws, but all in all, they had a surprisingly effective strategy. Not a perfect defense, as they were definitely still vulnerable to coordinated assaults, but definitely an above average build. On the opposite end of the spectrum from Allosaurus and Therizinosaurus, both of which had either weak or non-existent bite damage, we have the carnivore build that put all of its evolution points into maxing out the bite attack, the Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Ooh, B tier.
T-Rex had the most powerful bite attack in the history of the game, able to take out any player it was able to bite in a single hit. This also gave it the ability to crush bone, letting it access the XP-rich marrow inside, similar to what hyenas do in today's meta. T-Rex was a hybrid between a predator and scavenger build.
What the hell documentary is this? I gotta see this.
Hyenas do in today's meta.
I want to know what documentary this is.
Predator and scavenger build. It didn't have the greatest luck taking down the heavily armored herbivores of the Cretaceous expansion, but it could certainly defeat them if the T-Rex players worked in a group. And as a scavenger, its massive size gave it the ability to steal kills from other carnivore players who had no hope of surviving its devastating bite if they got in its way.
There's been a long debate about whether or not T-Rex was a hunter or a scavenger. The truth is, it's both. Like, T-Rex will find its own food, but if a T-Rex is hungry and it rolls up on another dinosaur eating an already dead dinosaur, is that dinosaur going to try to defend its kill against the T-Rex? No, it's going to run away. And the T-Rex is probably going to be sitting there with a half-eaten cheeseburger and be like, all right, you know what? I'm just going to finish this. It makes sense. Any big dinosaur, in a way, is a scavenger.
T-Rex did, however, have to sacrifice all of its other offensive strength in order to maximize its bite damage. Its arms were so short that its claw attack had pathetic range, making them useless both for holding prey and fighting rivals for territory. And it also wasn't particularly fast outside
I've read
of short
their arms
bursts
did
of speed.
actually have a
so
purpose.
If players saw it coming, which wasn't that hard because of its massive size, they wouldn't have too tough a time avoiding it. Still, with team strats, it was near unstoppable, and it always had the option to fall back on scavenging, so it was definitely a solid
They said its arms
tier.
were strong enough to lift like 800 pounds each.
The last B-tier build I want to talk about is Triceratops. In terms of defense in a single direction, no build has ever come close to Triceratops. Their horns can deal massive damage in a single swing, even to giant carnivore builds like T-Rex.
Just a quick note, they said that when T-Rex fought Triceratops, what it would do in the past is like, it would literally decapitate it. Like, the T-Rex would rip the Triceratops head off. So like, while they make it seem like it's an even fight, and there have been a lot of situations where Triceratops has killed T-Rex, it's not as even as what a lot of people think it is.
Their horns can deal massive damage in a single swing, even to giant carnivore builds like T-Rex. Looking at its stats, it's pretty clear that going head-to-head with this thing would end badly. However, one thing I've noticed is that players nowadays fail to remember its main drawback, low intelligence. This thing was pretty close to a modern-day opossum in terms of brain power, and as many of you should know from my Australia video, marsupials are some of the least intelligent mammals. People assume Triceratops behaved similar to a modern-day elephant, since both are about the same size and sport powerful front-facing weaponry. However, the herd behavior that makes elephants so untouchable by predators was absent in the Triceratops build, as they were mostly solitary, and this was due to their low intelligence stat.
Okay, now, maybe there's been some new developments in the dinosaur world that I'm not familiar with, but growing up, I always understood that Triceratops did in fact hang out in herds. Like, one of their main defense mechanisms were like, they would have the baby dinosaurs or the baby Triceratops get in the middle of a group of Triceratops, and they would like form a circle around them, all facing out to not only defend the babies, but make like an impenetrable barrier so dinosaurs can't like attack them. Now, I could be wrong. Maybe that was just bad information or misunderstood information at the time. I'd have to re-update myself as far as dinosaurs. Okay, I didn't stop anything. I pressed the... There we go.
Because of that...
I'm not sure why it stopped itself like that. 1 second. My computer's doing hiccups. Alright, you can start again.
They were highly vulnerable from being attacked from behind, or from multiple angles at once. Triceratops' low intelligence also meant that it was easily tricked into walking into ambushes set by carnivore mains, which pretty much always meant a game over for the Triceratops. As powerful as this build is, and it is powerful, don't get me wrong, I think it's definitely not a top tier dinosaur and caps out at B tier. Okay, so in A tier we've got the dinosaurs which were a bit smarter about how they invested their evolution points. First we have the Dromaeosaurus, the faction of dinosaurs that includes builds like Velociraptor, Deinonychus, and Utahraptor. These players made an interesting choice to forego the gigantism ability that made dinosaurs so dominant in the first place, and try their hand at more of an evasive rushdown playstyle,
except for the Utahraptor.
Their HP and defense stats to buff their mobility and DPS as best they could. Most notably, they spec'd into buffing a single claw on each foot, which had two important functions. The first being that it could deal massive slash and stab type damage, and the second being that it gave them the ability to hook onto players that they were targeting using the pounce attack. Overall, this build had much higher damage than normal for a build that size, and could easily take down players in a much higher weight class, especially if they attacked in a group, which they often did.
But they were very lightweight like birds.
They had the ability to weave in and out of their opponent's attack range easily, letting them bait out and dodge attacks. The one main drawback to this build was that if it ever got careless, they could easily take lethal damage in a single hit.
Yeah, they had like lightweight bones.
This faction was one of the most successful at the time and easily A tier. Also in A tier we have Carcharodontosaurus, a build very similar to T-Rex in terms of appearance, but with a slightly different plan of attack.
It has a weaker bite.
Instead of investing purely into bite force, maxing out base damage, Carcharodontosaurus spent its evolution points speccing into advanced serrated teeth. This gave their bite attack an increased chance to cause the heavy bleed status effect, which would drain the target's HP and stamina over time. This was more cost-effective than pure bite force, and let them retain enough evolution points to spec into claws too, giving them a more well-rounded combat style that could still cause lethal damage from a single bite. This strategy is similar to the one seen employed by the Komodo dragon player base in today's meta. Carcharodontosaurus was also one of the tankier carnivore builds, and could shrug off a hit or two even from the builds that would normally devastate anything that they landed a hit on.
I didn't know they fought against
Spinosaurus. This made them extremely good at PvP against the other carnivore builds at the time, making them an easy high-tier candidate. The next build I have in A tier is Ankylosaurus, perhaps the best tank build ever to exist.
I saw the pause icon, I paused it.
This build essentially took the Stegosaurus strategy and cranked it up to...
I'm not sure what's going on my computer right now. But, yeah. I didn't know exactly when Carcharodontosaurus lived. Like, I'm familiar with a lot of dinosaurs, like, span of time that they existed. But Carcharodontosaurus is one that I didn't really learn a lot about. Same with Giganotosaurus. I didn't know a lot about them. I just know that they were bigger than T-Rex. They didn't have as strong of a bite. Sometimes they were a little bit more lightweight. T-Rex was more of a heavyweight as opposed to them being more like a light heavyweight, if I could make an example. And they were more in, like, they bit and they like bled more. Like their thing was about making things bleed out. That's all I really knew about them, though. Alright, I clicked the...
Ankylosaurus, perhaps the best tank build ever to exist in the game. This build essentially took the Stegosaurus strategy and cranked it up to the most extreme it could. Instead of backplates for intimidation, the Ankylosaur players spec'd into armor, and instead of tail spikes they opted for a club. Their armor was so impenetrable that it made attacks from even the strongest carnivore mains pretty laughable. While their club didn't have a high crit chance like the tail spikes did, it did do massive damage that could shatter bone, capable of crippling any player unfortunate to take a direct hit from it. Ankylosaurus was near invincible except that it had one glaring flaw.
A soft underbelly.
Despite all of its defense and power, it was completely helpless if a player managed to flip it over. For that reason, I can't place it in top tier, because a good top tier will have no surefire counterplay. Last in A tier we have Troodon. The Troodon build was the only dinosaur build whose core strategy was based around the intelligence stat. Sure, other dinosaurs used team strategies or had advanced perception skills, both of which require some usage of intelligence, but Troodon was the only one to specifically tailor their build around having its brain be its best weapon. Troodon had to sacrifice a lot to get this. High intelligence requires a lot of calories to maintain, so getting the kills required to sustain both a large size and a large brain was impossible, meaning that they had to give up gigantism as a trait. So instead of powerful dagger-like claws, Troodon opted for smaller but opposable claws that could be used to pick up objects. This severely cut its potential in combat, but gave it a lot of options in terms of manipulating its environment to, for example, set up traps to catch players that would otherwise be able to evade them. It's very possible that if non-avian dinosaurs weren't banned in the Meteor Strike balance patch, Troodon players would have eventually leveled up their intelligence enough to become top tiers, similar to humans. But even though it was starting to gain the power to dominate its environment, it still had no way to combat the other top tiers, aside from just running away. So it definitely wasn't
like one of those mascots you see in one of those 90s educational games.
The most overpowered dinosaur faction of all, the Sauropods.
Sauropods
had every tool they needed to counter all other dinosaur builds. They had the maximum HP stat possible for a terrestrial build, and because they used the herd strategy, oftentimes this meant that if a sauropod player was caught off guard and was under attack by several carnivore players, it could usually tank enough hits that its teammates would have time to rescue it. And of all the dinosaurs, sauropods also had the largest attack range. Their whip-like tails may have not had the same damage per hit that Stegosaurus.
I'm not sure when I pressed the spacebar one time, it acts like I pushed it twice. But sauropods had pretty much hit a point where like they were so big and massive, they were like the elephants of their time. Like they got to the point where they were immune to the food chain. Like no creature on Earth was dealing with them unless they were like coming in like a really big pack. So sauropods are one of my favorites. It's always fascinating, like getting an update as to like what the biggest dinosaur ever was, and like every single time you have one, they'll discover a new bone and be like, oh well, this is now the big dinosaur. Like the majority of the time I was studying dinosaurs, Argentinosaurus was the biggest dinosaur of all time, but I think they've discovered at least like 2 other species that were bigger than it. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure there's been at least one that's been found to be bigger than Argentinosaurus. As far as size and mass.
Actually tank enough hits that its teammates would have time to rescue it.
Or theorized to be
and
bigger.
And of all the dinosaurs, sauropods also had the largest attack range. Their whip-like tails may have not had the same damage per hit that Stegosaurus or Ankylosaurus did, but they were still plenty powerful, able to knock down enemies well out of reach of a counterattack.
Hit them with the sneak
and if they did get too close, a sauropod's stomp attack was literally the most devastating move in the game, knocking the target down and dealing lethal damage. Lastly, their extreme height gave them a massive advantage for avoiding stealth attacks, as they could see much further than other players. In terms of land superiority, sauropods truly were the most overpowered dinosaurs of all time. It's unfortunate that the devs chose to ban the dinosaurs during the KT balance patch, but alas, the meta was getting stale, so I understand why. Hopefully you enjoyed this look back at the Mesozoic meta. If you enjoy watching videos about dinosaurs, there are a bunch of great documentaries I can recommend. For example, if you're curious about Troodon and why it was the smartest dinosaur ever, I have to recommend Leaps in Evolution, a documentary detailing the evolution of brains and intelligence. But if you just want a good, fun dinosaur story, one of my personal favorites is The Ballad of Big Al, a documentary that follows the life story of a single Allosaurus as it learns to hunt and survive in the Jurassic. Both of these great films have recently been added to CuriosityStream, a streaming service dedicated to serving up thousands of the absolute best nonfiction titles. Normally the subscription is $2.99 a month, but CuriosityStream is offering all TierZoo viewers a full month trial for free. Just head to curiositystream.com/TierZoo and use promo code TierZoo to get access. Thank you all so much for watching. This was my longest video to date, and there's no way I could justify the time spent on these videos without the support of my patrons on Patreon and sponsors like CuriosityStream, so huge thanks to both of them. Until next time, good luck out there.
Yeah, see, I'm gonna have to I'm gonna go over to CuriosityStream, and I might go ahead and take TierZoo up on that offer and do the free trial, because there's a lot of dinosaur documentaries that I'd love to get into. And like I said, The Ballad of Big Al is an old one. That came out back when like I was a kid. I must have been like maybe 10 or 12 or something when that came out. I remember that was like one of the earlier documentaries on Animal Planet. But yeah, dinosaurs have always fascinated me. Like every single time I study dinosaurs, it's like there's been new discoveries. So you always have to be updated on dinosaurs if you like are interested in them, because what you thought you knew at one point might be completely outdated as of right now. Like Jurassic Park is pretty much like, we always knew it was fictional and they kind of took liberties with dinosaurs, but now it's like it's at the point where you probably wouldn't, like if you saw the real dinosaur, you would not even recognize them because of you've associated them with the Jurassic Park looks. There was a time when, like, for example, T-Rex was believed to have been covered in feathers, and now the most recent update on it is that they believe that it might not have been. Or at least I believe the idea is that it had feathers growing up, but as it reached adulthood, all the feathers fell off. Like, for a time, there was a period where they thought that the T-Rex as an adult had feathers on like parts of its body, when now we believe that they probably just fell off at some point. The only thing that really gets me about dinosaurs, because I know dinosaurs evolved into birds. People falsely associate dinosaurs with reptiles, whereas like most reptiles are like a different category. Like, there was a common ancestor, and that common ancestor separated into like 3 branches, and one of those branches is reptiles, the other branch is dinosaurs, and I forgot the other one. But yeah, like dinosaurs aren't reptiles. And you can pick up on this with the fact that not only is their bone structure very similar to birds, but a lot of dinosaurs actually weren't cold-blooded. Like, we've learned that they weren't cold-blooded. And this is one of the reasons why, or at least a lot of the theropod dinosaurs weren't cold-blooded. This is why we know now that like T-Rex didn't have feathers, because only like the reason you would have feathers, I mean, part of it is probably for a display purpose, like mating and things like that, but another part of it is regulating body temperature. And given that T-Rex didn't have to worry about its body temperature being too low, it's less likely that it had feathers. I mean, who knows? Maybe at a year or two from now, they'll make some new discovery and find out they were completely wrong again and do some new stuff. But yeah, dinosaurs, like I said, are always fascinating because you always learn new stuff about them. And like I was about to say, the only thing that really I didn't understand about dinosaurs is, I know the theropods for sure evolved into birds, but I'm wondering what happened with Triceratops, like dinosaurs like that, Stegosaurus, the ones that didn't necessarily have the same structure as birds. I want to know where they evolved into, or did their like evolution chain just end with the dinosaur extinction? I'm gonna have to study more on it. But anyway, I will be checking out CuriosityStream. I will leave a link in the description box that will take you to CuriosityStream using TierZoo's promo. So if you want to support TierZoo, that's another way you can do it. Just click the link in this description box. That'll take you to TierZoo's promo page. And I will have a link for TierZoo's YouTube channel, which will be appearing right over here somewhere. You can click on it inside the video. It'll take you to their channel. You can subscribe and stuff. And I will have a link for the original video. So all you have to do is click on it, and it'll take you to this original video, so you can watch it without me talking or pausing. Because I know I pause a lot, and I'm pretty sure that got on a lot of people's nerves. Or if you want somebody else to react to it, whether it's a family member or another YouTuber, you can go ahead and use that link to take them to the original video. Because sometimes when people do reactions, they don't leave the original link, and it becomes harder to find the original video, because if it's a video that's popular among reaction channels, if you search for the video, only thing that's going to pop up is a bunch of reactions, and you're trying to find the original video, and if they don't leave a link, it makes it a lot harder. So I always try to leave the link in the description box. With that being said, I'm Devon DaVinci. Hopefully you've just been a little bit more enlightened. Until then, I'm going to give you guys the deuces, and I look forward to seeing you guys in my next video. Deuces.